Oh, hi. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone stays safe and healthy along the way. Thank you, Ricky. Yeah, that 10 years ago that we met in Australia, and that was the beginning at the point that Thailand understand about the GS1 standard, and we have begun to work as the um, many projects in helping the supply chain and logistics across the healthcare supply chain by using the GS1 standard. So my talk today will be like the keywords that you introduce: secure and optimize supply chain. Um, if you take a look at my topics, it's integrated digital supply chain for COVID-19 medical supply budgeting. Two keywords that I want to stress is integrated and digital, um, because this is the solution for secure and optimized supply chain. And the tools we use definitely is the GTIN. By the way, that thanks to GS1 Thailand who support us along this project. I would say that this project has done in last year, 2020, and we come up with a success story by this time, and we're still using this system in order to respond to this pandemic this year. Next, please. Um, yeah, as I say, it's the integrated digital supply chain, and in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. Um, the problem we have in Thailand is lack of the medical supply, and especially the mask and the PPE. The availability of stock, where it is, and how to identify the stock in our market. Um, the most critical problem is that mismatch between the demand and supply. Next, please. The digital supply chain. Um, from that problem, we have built the supply chain platform to link between the demand and supply. We put the pool of stock in the middle, of course, virtually, and we develop the matching algorithm between demand and supply. Next, please. I would check next, please. Next, please. I would say that the current system last year at this moment is that we have lots of supplies, but we don't know where it is. We have the support from the government, we have the fund from the government budget, we have the donor that donate many of the stock, and at the same time, we have the demand from the hospitals. But what happened is the mismatch between the demand and supply. They acting as the push system, and where the demand quantity specification mismatch with the demand, the supply and demand. No centralized database across the supply chain. So they don't and they can't identify the supply chain, the product in the supply chain, and they can't identify the supply chain availability of stock. No feedback platform to central operator cause an unbalance in distribution and stock across the hospital. Next, please. The proposed system, you can see the green line, the green box at the left-hand side and the yellow box at the right-hand side. From the green box, it's the supply pool. We put the donation and we put the product from the government budget into the supply pool on the green box. And at the same time, we put the demand pool in the yellow box from the hospitals. At that time, we know the green box availability of stock. We know the demand from yellow box. We developed the matching algorithm in the middle, and you can see the database at the bottom of the page. And that one is the database of the product catalog of medical supply of the up a bit to the from the database is the warehouse and distribution transportation. Next, please. The development of the SmartNet supply, it contains 6 systems: the donation and receiving system, and product catalog database. And importantly, in this product catalog database, we identify the products by the GTN. So each of the product in this database, we identify each product and availability of stock by the GS1 standard. And thirdly, we have the virtual stock system. Again, we identify the virtual stock in this system by the GS1 standard as well. And the fourth one is the matching algorithm between the demand and supply, as I mentioned. And the fifth one is the order management. In here, we receive the demand from the hospital. And the sixth one is important again, that it's a tracking system by the Thai Post Company. And here we have the G10, the GS1 standard for doing track and traceability. Next, please. In this one, we have the product catalog database system. Each of the, you can see a little bit of the product that has all identified by the G10. So we have the G10 standard, the GS1 standard identify those products in the database. Next, please. And on the other hand, we have the order management system, the web-based from the hospital, to allow them to key in what stock and what identification number that they want. And next, please, we map that from the demand and supply by the algorithm to the matching system. Stock on hand, urgent need, number of doctor, number of patient, severity of the condition, and we rank them into the priorities. And then we have the algorithm to match the demand and supply, of course, on the identification number by G10. Next, please. The example of the operations. We have the primary data, we have the order management, we have the matching system, and then we track and trace by the G10 standard identification number. And that you can see a bit of a little picture of the dashboard, that the distribution result, that we can show that how many PPE, how many medical supply, how many masks across Thailand, where it is, and in which hospital they have the stock, how many, and which location, how many more that they want, and that linked by the G10 identification number. Next, please. The result turned out that we have the balance between demand and supply for the non-medical supplies, a transparent of the resource allocation system, a centralized database of non-medical products, the product catalog database, and responding to the COVID-19. And also we have the supporting result on the dashboard to ease the decision maker as well. Next, please. Yeah, and at the end of the day, we cannot forget the role and responsibilities that we have to push it to the government. Here, we portion it into each player in the supply chain, the donation, the FDA, which is the focal point in the supply chain, the data controller. So each of the players responsible for each task in the supply chain. The donation, the donor, they key in the order, they see the virtual stock, they do the matching system, and then they do the virtual stock tracking. For the FDA, they key in the order, this web-based, we call it smart web supply. The virtual stock, they take care of the virtual stock, they verify the matching system, and they do the virtual stock tracking also. For the data controller, the tracking to the Thai Post, the administration, and the IT infrastructure is taken care by them. Next, please. This is all the role and responsibilities. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah, these are all the roles and responsibility, but you can see the purple one at the bottom. Here, the hospital, they use the GTN to identify the stock. The GPO, which is the government purchasing organization, they identify the stock by the GTN as well, and the usage of the planning. The 3PL, also, they identify the location, tracking, order receipt to the MOPH, the Ministry of Public Health, and the report to the dashboard by using GTIN as an identification number. Also, the other web donation, they're linked into our web base and identify the product by the GTIN. The opportunity, next please, the opportunities for re-engineering the healthcare system, the health system. In the future, not future anymore, in this year, we developed the system by the web base into the API, linking all the supply chain players together and link it by the electronic data interchange, the EDI between the GPO vendor and the hospital. The e-health infrastructure, as we have worked on this around 10 years from since the Australia conference, we have the database, we have the EDI, we have the track and traceability system, we have the material management inside the hospital, and we also push the government to have the data governance center, and then we have the big data in Thailand at the moment. We have the group purchasing organization, and we can't do anything without the G10, the GS1 standard, for identify the product for the identification number and track and traceability, and at the end is the big data for decision making for all over the product in Thailand. After all, yeah, that will be the end of my story. But after all, I would say that it's the trust and collaborations across the supply chain, across the supply chain player in Thailand, that if they use and they implement the GS1 standard attached with the product that travel along the way throughout the supply chain, that at that time we can have the demand pool, we can have the supply pool, we can match them, and then we can have the database with the product catalog identified by the GTIN, and that everything can be done. The track and traceability, the big data, and also the identification. This year, it's even more exciting because we play this system with the vaccine of the COVID-19. I believe that as because this project is in the running system at the moment, I think that in next GS1 healthcare standard healthcare conference, I could have the chance to share with you about the COVID vaccine supply chain track and traceability in the cold chain, because I couldn't share it this year because the project is still running and it's not the success story yet. But by the end of May or June, I think that we'll have the fully cold chain track and traceability by the GS1 standard. After all that, I would take this opportunity to thank GS1 Thailand for all the support and the guidelines, the guidance for our integrated digital supply, and also this year, the COVID-19 vaccine track and traceability cold chain in Thailand at the moment. Yeah, and that will be all for my talk today, and all the questions will be welcome. Back to Reengineer.